Okay, let's be, thanks. Okay, we got water now, just need, you're the post-news. Well, it's still, but the leaves are definitely full of leaf mold, I'm sure. Well, I couldn't believe.
Can you hear me?
All these years.
Hello? Hello? Can you hear me?
All these years.
Is that good, Mark?
It was outside.
I heard it in here.
Did you steal my little...
I did, I'm sorry. I
Off
meant to
that,
put that
and
on.
people started to find it.
If you want to get it.
Finally, I thought, oh my gosh.
Taco,
He said it was in decline.
7 years ago. Hello, hello, hello.
Good. Okay. Got some music.
Yep.
No, I was listening to Elf on the stream last week, and it didn't sound quite right. It sounded like maybe his microphone was not coming over the stream. At least not loud enough.
So you may have
So it was picking up from the room mics,
So he did
not as strong as it should have.
So could you simply not turn his belt back on?
But possibly.
Thought it was on, but I could be wrong.
Well, the way to tell is to go out.
Ah, well, I thought I could
He's
hear
on
him.
now. I just heard him in the lobby and I could hear him over here.
Yeah, in here it's a matter.
I think it's the AV goblins, don't they kind of like infiltrate everywhere?
According to Mark, the weekend.
Yes.
I wondered if it could be that when you swap the sound over there, would that have any effect on the roving mics?
It should.
It shouldn't. So I powered the system down and powered it back up, defaulting to here, and tested it again, and there was no difference. They're about as well as I've ever heard them. It's just so frustrating. Why are they getting
Well,
away with their
okay, do you have any, evidence that the surface itself was coming out with the lines?
I know evidence for that.
I think it was out
Certainly
here.
it was coming over the street.
Okay.
We watched it from home.
Okay, which means that it would have been coming over the speakers in the sanctuary, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that's how it gets to the stream. It comes out of the speaker straight into the microphone there. Is that right?
Minister's mic is on, you're directly mic'd.
Okay. Okay.
And in fact, you're balanced well above, the run mics.
Okay.
Delivered.
Okay. The reason I ask is because I normally can hear myself over the speakers. I normally notice it, and I didn't yesterday. But that doesn't mean I'm just being close to the ratings.
And that's good.
Yeah. That's okay. So good call.
That's up to you.
She's good. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Glen Union Church for our worship service this morning. We're going to sing 2 or 3 warm-up songs as we get ready for our service. And our first warm-up song will be number 139, Seek Only Thy Perfect Way. 139. Now.
talk about humility, humbleness, and we're going to talk about it a different way than maybe we have in the past. For the kids, we're going to look at a story about King Nebuchadnezzar, who was very full of himself, and what happened to him. And then later on for the adults, we're going to read a little excerpt from Luke, and we're going to talk about what it is to be stripped of your leaves. And is that a good thing or not? The king of the Nebuchadnezzar story, it even leaves the tree as a stump. Maybe some of you that have been looking around outside today, or when you leave, you can see there's a lot more new stumps around here because a bunch of people just worked really hard to humble those trees. So, it should be a good, fun morning for all of us. Let's all stand up, please, and will you join us for a song?
Our opening song today is number 62, Hear, O Lord, number 62.
O Lord, you are God. We will exalt you. We will praise your name, for you have done wonderful things. Let us pray. Lord, we come to you full of our own personal thoughts and feelings, asking you to help us let them go. Help us to see your beauty with us. Help us to turn our focus away from worldly things and give your goodness and truth to others. Help our fallen leaves be the fertilizer of humble good habits. Amen. Our Father, who art in the heavens, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, as in heaven, so upon the earth. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we also lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. O Lord, forgive us our trespasses.
As we forgive those who trespass against us.
Amen. Please rise. If we all will turn to the second page in our pamphlets, at the top there is our recitation that I'd love for all of us to recite together. The person who is greatest among you will be your servant, and whoever exalts themselves will be abased, and they who humble themselves will be exalted. Thank you. You may be seated. So even in that our recitation today, it was talking about humility, and probably used a word that a lot of the kids didn't really know what it means. But abased, in some ways, means stripped down. It means that if you are thinking you're mighty and strong, there's a good chance that you're going to find out that you're not as mighty and strong as you think. Now, it looks like we have some people here that might like to participate in our story today about King Nebuchadnezzar. Would anyone want to participate? All right, ladies, you come up. Perfect. You're a perfect age group for this. One of you is going to play King Nebuchadnezzar, and one of you will play Daniel, okay? So King Nebuchadnezzar, you can sit on your throne for now. Go ahead. And what you want to do at first is think you're big stuff. You're mighty and strong, and you think you own a lot of things. And as the story goes on, it'd be nice if you try to act a little bit like what's happening to King Nebuchadnezzar. Put your best acting hat on. And Daniel, you can stand over here, and you don't come quite in yet, but you're going to be the one who tells King Nebuchadnezzar what his dream means. Okay. Let's start our story out. And this story comes from King Nebuchadnezzar's it's from his own words. So he writes this as if it's him talking about what's going on. I, Nebuchadnezzar, was at rest in my house and flourishing in my palace. I saw a dream which made me afraid. These were the visions of my head while on my bed. I was looking, and behold, a tree in the midst of the earth, and its height was great. The tree grew and became strong. Its height reached to the heavens, and it could be seen to the ends of all the earth. Its leaves were lovely, its fruit abundant, and in it was food for all. The beasts of the field found shade under it. The birds of the heavens dwelt in its branches, and all flesh was fed from it. I saw in the visions of my head while on my bed, and there was a watcher, a holy one, coming down from heaven. He cried aloud and said thus, chop down the tree and cut off its branches, strip off its leaves and scatter its fruit. Let the beasts get out from under it and the birds from its branches. Nevertheless, leave the stump and roots in the earth, bound with a band of iron and bronze, in the tender grass of the field. Let it be wet with dew of heaven, and let him graze with the beasts on the grass of the earth. Let his heart be changed from that of a man. Let him be given the heart of a beast, and let 7 times pass over him. The decision is by the decree of the watchers, and the sentence by the word of the holy ones, in order that living may know that the Most High rules in the kingdom of men, and sets over it the lowest of men. This dream I, King Nebuchadnezzar, have seen. Now this is where you come in. Now you, Belteshazzar, that's what the king calls Daniel. Declare its interpretation, since all the wise men of my kingdom are not able. Then Daniel, who the king named Belteshazzar, was astonished for a time. So you're astonished now. You don't know what you're going to do, it looks like. And his thoughts troubled him. So the king spoke and said, he's going to talk to Daniel, Belshazzar, do not let the dream or its interpretation trouble you. And then Belshazzar answered and said, My lord, may the dream concern those who hate you, and its interpretation concern your enemies. The tree that you saw, it is you. You can point a finger at the king now. It is you, O king. You have grown and become strong. For your greatness has grown and reaches to the heavens, and your dominion to the end of the earth. And as much as the king saw a watcher, a holy one, coming down from heaven and saying, Chop down the tree and destroy it, and let him graze with the beasts of the field, this is the interpretation which has come upon my lord the king. They shall drive you from men. Your dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field, and they shall make you eat grass like oxen. And as much as they gave the command to leave the stump and roots of the tree, your kingdom shall be assured to you after you come to know the heavens rule. Therefore, O king, let my advice be accepted to you. Break off your sins by being righteous, and your iniquities by showing mercy to the poor. Perhaps there may be a lengthening of your prosperity. And then Daniel, you can go off. That was your job. You just told the king, what's up? Now here's what happens. Now you're going to do a little more acting here, okay? See if you can do this. All this came upon King Nebuchadnezzar 12 months later. He was walking by the royal palace of Babylon. The king spoke, boasting, I have built this great Babylon for a royal dwelling by my mighty power and for the honor of my majesty. While the word was still in the king's mouth, a voice fell from heaven. King Nebuchadnezzar, to you it is spoken, the kingdom has departed from you, and they shall drive you from men, and your dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field. They shall make you eat grass like oxen. And 7 times shall pass over you until you know that the Most High rules in the kingdom of men and gives it to whomever he chooses. That very hour, the word was fulfilled concerning Nebuchadnezzar. He was driven from men and ate grass like oxen. So get lowly. You're lowly. Now you've just turned into an oxen or something. His body was wet with dew of heaven, till his hair had grown like eagle's feathers, and his nails like bird's claws. Wow. And at the end of the, don't be down the whole time. Ends well. At the end of the time, I, Nebuchadnezzar, lifted my eyes to heaven, and my understanding returned to me. And I blessed the Most High and praised and honored him who lives forever. For his dominion is everlasting dominion, and his kingdom is from generation to generation. No one can restrain his hand or say to him, What have you done? At the same time, my reason returned to me, and for the glory of my kingdom, notice not for himself, but for the glory of my kingdom, my honor and splendor returned to me. You may stand up now. My counselors and nobles resorted to me. I was restored to my kingdom, and excellent majesty was added to me. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and extol and honor the King of heaven, all of whose works are truth and his ways justice. And those who walk and ride, he is able to put down. Thank you so much, actors. That was wonderful. Or actresses. Wow, that's a pretty crazy story. Did you hear what happened there? What happened to King Nebuchadnezzar in that story? He was a normal king, or not a normal king, a big, powerful king. What happened to him? Does anyone remember what happened to him? Anyone? What did he turn into? Yeah. He turned into like some kind of, he was feeding with the oxen. He was like a beast. What else happened to him? Did you hear some other stuff happened to him? His nails grew, maybe they grew real long. Have you ever seen a picture of someone with really long nails that are old and swirly? Sometimes people do that to think it looks pretty. But they get really long and nails curl, and they just probably look like bird's claws, right? And what else? What did it say about his hair? It was like Yeah, eagle's feathers, right. Can you imagine what kind of creature that would look like? Would you want to see that creature? I don't think I would. Maybe I'd be a little interested, but then I'd go, ugh, that'd be a weird looking creature. So King Nebuchadnezzar turns into this creature, and he looks at himself probably, right? What would you do if you looked like that? Would you be not wanting to be that way anymore? Yeah, you'd probably want to switch over quickly. So he did what? He remembered what Daniel had told him a year earlier. It took him a year to figure it out. A year earlier he said, Daniel told me that if I let this bad habit of mine, this bad habit to think I'm the most important and I'm the most powerful, and this is all for me, if I don't break that bad habit, Daniel told me this was going to happen. I didn't believe it. But now seeing is believing. Here I am in the present, and I don't look like King Nebuchadnezzar. I look like the beast that I was trying to protect. Pretty crazy story. So most of us aren't going to be kings over most of the world, or even a large chunk of it. And most of us aren't going to be having all these nobles working for us and things like that. But do we think at some point in our life we're going to think we're pretty important? Maybe we don't do it right now, but at some point in our life we're going to be thinking, I'm the most important person in the room. Or I think things should go my way, especially when we're little, right? When we're playing, we get so caught up and focused on how we want to play a game that sometimes we forget that everybody's involved, right? So is that a good habit for us to think about only ourselves a lot? What's a good habit? What's a good habit to do? Yeah. Think of other people. There's lots of good habits we can have too. That's the top of the one, because when we think about that, it helps us to have other good habits. Because we have lots of habits. Sometimes we bite our nails. Sometimes we pick our nose. Sometimes we might, I don't know, there's lots of bad habits. We might not really read what we're supposed to read, or not really write down as carefully as we can. There's lots of bad habits we can get into. And those are ones that if we just break one of those, it's like being humble. So when you just can break one habit, sometimes that leads to even more habits that you can break. If you just try to do one little thing, you know how you know that's being humble. You know why that's being humble? Breaking a bad habit. Well, it's kind of like what Mo said earlier. When you break a bad habit, usually a bad habit is a bad habit because it's not good for you or for someone else or both. So when you break a bad habit, it's making room for the Lord to come inside, come with you, and give you some better stuff. So when you look to the Lord and you go, I want Him to be with me, I know what I can do. So I can maybe just break one bad habit. I'll start there. Maybe I'll just figure it out. Maybe I'll just be extra nice to that person I haven't been being very nice to recently. And see what happens. See what happens. See if I can kind of change a little bit more into a king, a good king instead of a bad king. Right. Okay. There's one more thing I want to show you guys before you leave. It's not fair that I only give this to the adults, right? The adults are going to get some pictures too, but I want to give you guys a picture. Okay. Here it is. Okay, this is it. So we know what a tree's like. This is a tree, and it knows that God has blessed us. It's a tree, it's beautiful, it's got beautiful leaves in it, and it's full and grown. This is a tree. When we have humility, we realize what we are without Him. So the trees that you're looking outside that are getting all barren, you could think of them like humble people who realize that without the Lord, this is what I look like. I'm not quite as pretty, but with the Lord, I'm beautiful, right? But what's something else that's interesting is when these trees are really humble and they let their leaves go, it does these amazing things. It does great things for the soil. leaves protect flower beds and the soil underneath. And then what happens when you're humble and you stop a bad habit, maybe you can see these leaves maybe dropping a bad habit. What happens in the spring when it gets warm again? Do you know what that little thing is? Yeah, Nico? It's a plant. Right. And so when we stop a bad habit and make room to do something nice for someone, we start making little sapling grows. Right there. Little sapling grows in us when we do something like that. Just like in nature, when the leaves are humble and they drop their leaves, what happens in the spring is something new, something brand new grows up. And sometimes that new thing might get big and tall and soak up so much sun like King Nebuchadnezzar did. But like King Nebuchadnezzar did after he realized, after he was humble and made us remember that the Lord should be praised and wants us to stop our bad habits. So when you look into nature this winter and this fall, don't be so sad. Don't be so sad about those trees, because they're just showing us how they're being humble right now. And that's a good thing, right? Absolutely. So that's our lesson. Let's try to be like the trees are sometimes. We don't want to be stripped down all year round, but just maybe at the right time we want to remember that we're not so important. We're just like a tree stripped of their leaves. And when we look to the Lord, He'll bring back all that good stuff. Like it's spring, it will be beautiful, like a beautiful tree in the spring and summer. And before I forget too, when you do things like that, you give truths to other people. Give little truths. So if any of you want to come up real quickly and take a colored leaf that you want, you're going to have to go home and cut it out. Every little plant needs some care, and you're going to have to care for this. You can cut out the leaf when you get home. And Eloise, don't be so picky, because guess who will have these after the service? Okay. There you go. Good job. And I'll put a lot more out for after the service if any adults or anyone, other families, or think there might be someone at home who wants one of these. There's plenty. You can cut them out. They have little sayings from the Word, little true sayings from the Word to make you feel like everything is okay. And you can even, if you want to, pop a little hole in them and hang them. If you want to get a couple, I'm sure there's a need for a couple. Because when we do good things, break good habits, we can give people truths and good things in return. Amen. Please rise. For our prayer. Please kneel for our prayer. Lord, we are barren trees that you adorn with leaves and fruits. May the fruits you give us give life for generations to come. Let our stopping a bad habit help grow an orchard of goodness. Amen. The Lord give his angels charge over you to keep you in all of your ways. Please rise.
Our next song is number 1. It's for you.
Thank you.
free will offering for the people of your church. May it help us to meet others where they are and humbly walk together with them on the path that leads to you. Okay, now it's time for our kids to meet their Sunday school leaders in the assembly hall. And for the rest of us to enjoy tonight's.
So for our interlude and close school today, for both of those morning, I invite you to join in and sing if you like. For our interlude, it is our song of the month, Come Thou Fount, number 28. Feel free to join us. Come Thou Fount, 28.
We had lots of good, humble thoughts during King Nebuchadnezzar's journey there. A tough one that we all go through in some ways. Maybe some of us here can remember a particular humbling time in our lives where we felt pretty low. Sometimes that might have caused us to lose a job or a friend, or maybe it even changed our mindset of how we went forward in the future with how we think about things. Some of us probably can dwell on that and realize that in that moment, great things happen, even though at the time it seemed pretty dark. So even like our trees out here, where it does actually get dark and the trees themselves look a lot darker, there is this great thing going on, this great hope that goes along with these trees when they're doing this thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first read us a little section from Arcana Celestia that talks to us about the process of humility. So maybe we think about humbleness as a simple thing of looking to the Lord and rejecting evil, and that does some good things for us. So the teachers of the new church discuss this a little bit more in its inner workings, like the mechanics of what humility does. And by going through this process and seeing how it works, the hope is that we understand it better, and it makes it easier for us to understand why we humble ourselves and what happens during it and why it's important. So we're going to look first at Arcana Celestial or Secrets of Heaven 4347. And let's try to listen carefully because this does talk about the mechanism. And then I'm going to show you a chart that will better explain it if you haven't processed it fully through this reading. When humility is present in a person, the person turns away from the evil and falsity present in him or her, and in so doing, removes them. Once these have been removed, the divine, or the Lord, is able to flow in with good and truth. Anyone can recognize this within his or herself. One who is haughty is ruled by self-love and not only sets himself or herself up above others, but also does not care a thing about the Lord. As a consequence, the person turns back the influx of good and therefore prevents it from being joined to truths. This is the real reason why a person should express humility in the presence of the divine. From this, it is evident that good cannot be joined to truths, and so a person cannot be regenerated or have positive change unless the person humbles himself or herself and is submissive. Humility and submission are attributed to the truths because truths flow in by the way of the external person, whereas good does so by way of the internal. The things which flow in by way of the external person hold within them misconceptions and consequently falsities together with affections for them. Not so the things which flow in by the way of the internal person, since it is divine which flows in by way of this means. Okay. So there's a lot of, we're still trying to put that together maybe. So I made this handy dandy little diagram I'm going to make for you, or I made for you. This, in its simplicity, if everyone can see that, or at least kind of picture it, it'll help, is what is happening to a person who has no humility. So if you have no humility, what you've done, and this is the internal person, this inside, that's like our spirit or our spirituality, the thing that makes us, the part of us that's going to be eternal, right, is our spirit or our spirituality. This person with no humility has mucked all this up in the middle here with evil and falsity. And just it's a big heap of this junk. And because this person doesn't care about the Lord or divine things or things more than themselves. So there's many degrees to this, of course. A person who might not believe in the Lord, but believes in the neighbor and wants to do good things for them, they're not going to be as mucked up as this. This is a person who's shut down everything and said, I don't want to hear anything unless it has to do with my dominion, me, myself. So when this happens, the teachings of the new church say, the goodness, the good from the Lord and his angels, it comes down, it's always flowing. And no matter whether this person has humility or not, it's always flowing into everyone. But when this person has mucked up his spirit with all this, that goodness bounces off. It has nowhere to stay. There's nowhere to go. So it just shoots back out. Meanwhile, what's going on here is this person has truth and falsity coming in at them from an external root. So we can kind of understand that. When we read something, that's kind of like gives us truth. Maybe someone tells us something that's true, that originated from the Lord. That's something, all that stuff kind of comes in from an external point. We can understand that. It's an external kind of thing. That when it comes in, if it's got no place to live, it just bounces back out. Whereas, this person, there's two things that could happen. This person could take a truth and twist it up so it's unrecognizable and then throw it on the heap of garbage that it has inside that person. Or it'll hear a falsity and that might go right in there. And then it can combine with an evil, which is evil, interestingly, as we think, is a more external root too. Even hell is a more external kind of place than heaven, right? So this is what happens with a person with no humility. They're not making those good bonds of good and truth, those things from the Lord mixed in with things you hear about that you know are true. And here's just an example. Here's the segue to the next one, right? This is a person who's like all of us here probably, who has a little bit of good, a little bit of openness to humility in the Lord, and some that's not. So most of us here, I imagine, are like that. We are humble about some things and not so humble about other things. And so when that goodness flows down towards us or into our spirits and wants to be with us, some things we're going to reject and spit out the other way. And some things are going to have room, are going to be open enough for a truth to come in. And when we have that truth, say something about like love the neighbor, there's a truth. You should care about others more than yourself. Us knowing that there's a Lord and being humble to that, and that piece of truth comes now into us, and those two things link within us. And the more we hear that over and over again, that truth, and the more we think that is the right way, the more they bond and become this really special thing in us. And something that we can take to heaven with us. If we hear something else that we don't like, which happens, we probably all here in this room, even though we believe in God, and some of us here are really strong new church people, we've probably bounced against something in our religion that we itched our head about or scratched. And maybe that was something that's sitting there on the wayside. Maybe that goodness that's still coming in, that truth, maybe it bounced off and it's like lying here on the outskirts of our physical or external person. It maybe is waiting still to get back in there. But that happens with all of us. We have some things that's hard for us to adjust to. But meanwhile here, the important part is that there's lots of falsity bouncing off, even though we're letting some in. And here, of course, is the person, the ideal person, which we only think of as like the closest angels to the Lord must be like this. I bet you even they have some humility issues compared to the Lord. So this is full humility. There's nothing to stop the goodness from flowing in. The Lord's coming down, flowing in. We've made ourselves humble. We realize we're like that stripped tree. There's nothing we really have to give. It's the Lord that has to give us things. We're open to that. And that when we hear those truths from Him then that are coming from external sources, the Word, people, ones we love, that makes this great bond with that goodness. And it changes our entire life, right? We have all kinds of we have a new mindset, we have ways of thinking we never had before. We have love for people and compassion, even empathy for people maybe, and an openness we maybe never had before because of that. So this is the process of simply how it works. We could make more and more diagrams about this. But instead of doing that, I'm going to just express to you what we kind of express to the kids, but in a little bit different way. So the doctrines or the teachings of the new church, or the theology of the new church, teaches us that a tree is like a person. Its fruits are like its uses. Its leaves are like a person's truths, or the truths with him. If he's a good person, if he or she is a good person, it's rational truths. They use that word to mean that from the light of the Lord you've seen the goodness in that truth, and it's a rational or good truth. So when these trees, what we don't know, just like people, maybe not some of us know this, there's a thing called mycorrhiza. Does anyone know what that is? Anyone will nod? Mycorrhiza, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. Mycorrhiza, okay. Mycorrhiza, thank you. And the trees are constantly communicating underground in this network of roots and passing along sugars that they get from the sun into these roots that cause this fungus. And maybe we can talk to someone else who knows way more about nature than me after this to find more details. But this is basically what happens. And passes along this thing through the roots and communicates with all the other trees in the forest. in this way. And when this tree is healthy, often these are called hub trees. They are the trees that are the tallest in the forest. They reach up the highest and are closest to the sun. They get the most warmth and light from the sun. They pass this along to all the other trees in the forest. So all the other trees get the healthy nutrients they need. And what's really interesting is this occurs all the way through the year, especially maybe in winter when it's about to be spring. These leaves fall and they protect the ground, and then the snow falls, and when the snow starts melting, that water and moisture and those nutrients from those leaves feed back into that root system and back into that soil and communicates this wonderful thing all through the forest. And so if the tree, the big hub trees, if they're healthy, the forest will be healthier too. So when we just look at the chart we just looked at, and then we think about this process in trees and get to know it better, we can see how maybe far more detailed this process is of humility with people. There's affections involved and all kinds of crazy things and directions we could go. But it is much like the trees are passing along truth to each other, and that goodness from the Lord is making all that truth get soaked up into them, and they're using it for the best advantage. And then in the spring, they're again producing beautiful leaves. So in our story of King Nebuchadnezzar, his leaves are stripped down and he's left just a stump. And even with a stump, there are things from that root system that still give life to others. Just like even if we bring ourselves someday down to a stump, we'll still have something to give. But the wonderful story really is here is that when we look at trees, what we see most of the time is that story of humility, of losing all their leaves, passing along their truths to other people, and then that story of rebirth, of that tree getting new life in the spring and returning even stronger, hopefully, than it was before, a year older or a season older and stronger because it had that moment of humility. So if we all can look at nature this season and see a little bit of that in it, I think it'll brighten up our fall and winter. When we're looking out at that gray and that brown and blackness, we can say, oh, that is nature having its humble moment. And that's a reminder to me that maybe I need a couple more humble moments in my life. Amen. Let us pray. We are boastful, O Lord. We seek to be humble. Help even our mistakes be of service to you. In our humility, we build healthy connections to others. In our humility, we reject evil. Only in our humility are we open to your truth. We are truly thankful. Amen. Now please hear the silent prayers of our hearts. Rise.
Okay, our next song is going to be number 75, Hymn of Thomas, number 75.
Oh
Jesus Christ be with us all. Amen.
Our closing song today is number 16, Be Thou My Vision. Number 16. We get to the fourth verse. At the end of the first line, we have a suggestion to change the words, may we be as one. And the first line, may we be as one.
open it up for any discussion of that topic or any thoughts you had during the service. Anyone would like to speak? We have mics in the back. The gentleman who corrected me on my pronunciation will now speak.
What I've noticed is just in my life, when you mix humility with things, whether it's intent, even if it's a strong point of view, as soon as you mix humility into it, it goes over a lot better than if you remove that. So even in my own relationship with my wife, if my ego is the underlying force behind my conversation about a topic where there's a difference of opinion, if I can change that ego to incorporate humility, it goes a lot further in our conversation than the immediate wall of ego, which tends to throw itself up periodically. And I think even in our political climate, if we could take some of the ego out of these things and throw in some humility.
Or humidity.
I think it would go a long way in making people feel like the intent is truly on behalf of people versus the individual.
Absolutely, thank you. Yeah, agreed. Wouldn't it be nice if politics was like that? I don't know if I'll even see that in my lifetime. Yeah.
In my life, I find the real humility comes in the 2 or 3 days of soreness after an hour of breaking leaves.
Yes, you'd think it would be easier for us to be humble, considering that our bodies remind us of it constantly as we age. That you're getting older, and you're actually, as we get older, we actually start humbling ourselves where we want to or not. Right?
I love how the writings point out that nature is constantly reminding us of things, basically look towards the Lord, like cocoon turns into a butterfly's rebirth, and a tree losing its leaves is like one of the stories where it says that sometimes people in heaven believe that their goodness is on themselves, and God basically removes himself from that person, and they fall right back into their evils. So the analogy of the tree losing all its leaves is that if God isn't there, there's no fruit, there's no leaves, and really there's no life. And so that constant presence in our life gives us our color, gives us our breath, gives us everything. So I love that fact that nature is constantly reminding us of that.
Yes. I like that too. Any other thoughts? Yeah, so I hope I spun this in the right direction where we can look at nature and our gray, cloudy winter we're about to have and just be reminded of something that's really good. That's something good for us. That with that memory lets the Lord in a little bit more and can make us brighter. I wrote a little excerpt for our Park News send-out thing that talked about just because it's winter outside doesn't mean you need to be winter inside. You can still be spring-like and summer-like in your activities, even if winter and fall is trying to fight against that full function. Great, thanks. So it looks like in our announcements today, it looks like what we must be compelled to say is there is a park dwelling annual meeting today at noon, which is being encouraged for people to show up to that and to help with that park dwelling process. Also, I'd like to remind us of a couple things coming up because the holidays are coming up quick. We have an interfaith Thanksgiving service Tuesday, November 26th at Trinity Lutheran Church. And if some of you that's a Tuesday, so that would mean some of you would have to go to church twice that week or maybe even 3 times. But it would be really nice for some of you to come there and share your love of the Lord with people who do love the Lord in different ways. And then, is there anything else I should be reminding them of?
Well, I just want to, I wrote to the congregation last night, but I want to say publicly how thankful I feel for the work party that happened yesterday. there was word that went out weeks in advance. We, sort of all hands on deck, and just really appreciated how people responded to that call. We had the biggest party, the work party we've ever had that I've been here, and a lot of good work got done to keep our park beautiful. Thanks everyone for turning out.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And I thought I was working, and then I looked at pictures that my brother took, and it looks like I was just staying around the whole time. So,
It's called Foreman.
yeah, it's great. So very good. So, but look at your announcements. There's some other important things coming up in the holidays. You got to schedule those in now so you can make time for them. So please take a look at your announcements and mark it on your calendars. Thank you very much. Happy Humble Day.
Thank you.